Not only were there issues with the quality of the water, there were issues with the quantity of water. The city could not produce enough running water for Jacksonians. Today, some 7 days later, I'm very happy to report that we have returned water pressure to the city. The tanks are full or filling. There are currently 0 water tanks at low levels. Chastain is the pump closest to the O.B. Curtis plant, often called a bellwether for the system. The health department told me this morning that it is full for the first time in months. We are resuming investigative testing. After the bad water has been flushed through the system, we should hopefully find that Jacksonians have access not only to the quantity of waters needed to keep pressure in the system, but also that Jacksonians shall have access to clean water. Health officials tell me this morning that the plant is pumping out cleaner water than we've seen for a very, very long time. We will keep you updated on that. And the teams that we've acquired for the city will continue to work diligently to make repairs, to do maintenance, and all of the other things that have been necessary for years. I am proud of the work that they have done. I know that all Jacksonians and all Mississippians are proud of the work they have done. For those who worry that their absence would mean a return to severely low water pressure, I want you to know that these teams will be active for some time to come. We know that it is always possible that there will be more severe challenges. This system broke over several years, and it would be inaccurate to claim it is totally solved in a matter of less than a week. We know how to respond to crisis, and we know how to do so effectively. We have the personnel in place today to prevent as many issues as possible, while understanding that a week of repairs does not eliminate each and every risk. There may be more bad days in the future. We have, however, reached a place where people in Jackson can trust that water will come out of the faucet, people in Jackson can trust that toilets can be flushed, and people in Jackson can trust that fires can be fought. In anticipation of a return to school for students in Jackson tomorrow, we are pulling back water distribution from school locations, and we are moving those resources to our other water distribution mega sites. Those sites have slowed down in demand a bit over the weekend, but we have still put out approximately 5 million bottles of water over the last several days. As we turn towards long-term solutions in the near future, I want to clarify a few things that have become even more clear over the last few days. There are indeed problems in Jackson that are decades old, on the order of $1 billion to fix. The crisis we intervened to solve is not one of those problems. O.B. Curtis was built approximately 30 years ago. It cost a little over $20 million to build it from scratch. If I remember correctly, the membrane side of the plant was built sometime in the mid-2000s. The water system actually operated at a profit until the wheels fell off only 10 years ago. Jackson government is taking in more revenue overall these days than ever before. So what happened? How did we get here? Basic work to maintain the facilities was not done because the few heroic staff in that plant had been abandoned. This crisis cost effort and tens of thousands of dollars to fix, and at a time to prevent, not billions and billions of dollars. Whatever investment comes next, basic competency to run a water system has to come with it. We cannot continue on the way that we've been going. The state has invested and will continue to invest a tremendous amount of resources to quickly fix what has been broken over the past few years. We've administered approximately $150 million in state and federal funds to the city over the last several years. We'll spend tens of millions of dollars more on this mission. I vetoed state funding for golf courses and parking lots in Jackson this year because I knew that we would need to provide big investments like this at some point. Unfortunately, we've never received a real plan from Jackson on how to improve their water system so that the state could consider funding it. I know Congressman Thompson said the federal government is in a similar situation. I hope that this week demonstrates the clear need for one. The solutions to this problem are not radical, they're common sense. Prioritize basic services, water, sewer, trash. Hire the necessary people. Let them do their jobs. Don't make excuses. Just go forth and deliver water. I'm very grateful for the team engaged in this mission over the last week because they have done exactly that. We have more work to do to prevent future crises, but I am very proud of the frontline teams that have not slept throughout their efforts to return water to Jackson. Today, the tanks are full, water pressure is solid, and we can thank the people who have done quiet, competent work at that plant for making that possible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Executive Director of the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, Mac McCraney. Mac.
Thank you, Governor. I just want to cover a few things that we've got still ongoing in anticipation. The governor mentioned it, of schools starting back tomorrow. We want to go ahead and collapse out of those educational institutions. It's going to take us all throughout the night to move a lot of our equipment and stuff out, but we'll continue to supply those during the day today, and we'll do that, and we'll also increase it in our other sites. I rode through the other sites. They can definitely handle more throughput. The Guard tells me they've got that mission, and it will be a success. So it won't be a volume dysfunction in any part of our ability to put out drinkable water as we've been doing in those sites. So the ones that we're going to expand are going to be the Fairground site, the Metro Center site, Smith Wheels, and the Davis Road location in Byram will still remain open, but that site cannot expand any more than it is at this current time. So we feel like we've got a great plan going there. And we've also got 9 donation sites throughout the city that are going on. New Horizon, I went through a couple of those yesterday, along as the Deputy Director here did as well. So looking at those and getting those volunteer donation truckloads of water in have been paramount to help those other sites that are remaining out there that the volunteers are working. And we couldn't do it without them, the faith-based groups and others. We definitely want to tell them thank you as we sit here. And the governor's right. 4.9 million bottles of water distributed by the National Guard in a very short ordered part of time, and that is not a small mission. That is a huge mission, but it's something that we're invested in the city of Jackson, and we want to make sure that they have all the things that they need. You know, I had somebody ask me yesterday, well, why are you giving out hand sanitizer? Well, I don't want them to use drinking water to sanitize their hands, and that's why we were augmenting something that would help that drinking water last even longer. So it's just a little thing sometimes that will actually make it better. We've got a little over 250 to 300 calls into our call center, and I want to say that number one more time because we have MEMA employees that are sitting there. If you have a question or if you have a need that has not been met at this time, we want to help you get to what we call success. So that is 1-833-591-6362. Call the number, and we're gonna make sure that we lace you into those things that you might need. The governor mentioned we've got other teams here at the state. So Jim Craig and myself, we looked at some of the operators that were needed at the plant, and we've got some great Americans that came to us. So Florida is one of them, the Department of Health. We've got 4 operators from there that are here in the state, and I want to give them a shout out. They came quick and early, and they continue to do great work and augment augment that staff that's on site. Louisiana's got 4 personnel here on site at the state as well. Georgia's got 2 personnel. So this is a Southeastern Conference. Our Region 4 partners, these other state directors, we're on a first-name basis. We talk to each other all the time, and they say, what do you need? And they send it our way. So we would definitely want to give them a shout-out and give them credit for what they're doing. Mississippi Rural Water Association, that's another one that's coordinating our EMAC and our requests for those operators all around. Savannah Rural Water and Columbia Rural Water. So it's just not MEMA. It's just not the Department of Health. We reach out to, and when other states have issues and we can provide them resources, we definitely do that, because disasters are not planned. I do want to talk about the 9 sites again, donation sites. I want to give a little bit of credit where credit's due for them. New Horizon Church, American Civil Liberties Union's doing some distribution. Freedom Ministries International, Jackson State University has some. MagCor Industries, Cathedral, AME Zion Church, St. Joseph Baptist Church, and New Vision Worship Center. These are putting out a lot of water at their sites as well, and we're able to get the Walmarts, the others that want to make donations, we're able to put them in contact with them to keep those things flowing there as well. The governor talked about we're heavily invested in this response. We're not turning away. Jim Craig and the team that are out there, the Department of Health, have got a great plan. We're going to move forward. We're going to fix things that need to be fixed and keep it where it's maintainable. The city of Jackson has been an incredible partner. They're a manager out there on site. So all of this together, we talk about a unified command, and it is a unified command. When you have the city of Jackson, you have MEMA, and then you have Department of Health, we have the EPA, we have the Corps of Engineers, we have FEMA. The partner list can go on, that we all sit in there and everybody has a lane, something they can bring to this disaster, and that's the way you make something that looks good. And so, Governor, that's all I've got for this time, and I'll wait for questions.
Thank you, Mac, for you and your team. And our partnership with FEMA has always been strong, and I would say today has never been stronger. We sincerely appreciate Alan Jarvis from FEMA, who is also here. And should we have any questions with respect to federal support, we'll certainly have him here to answer questions as well. When I first talked about the state intervening in this crisis last Monday night, you heard me talk a lot about the 2 immediate challenges, obviously quantity of water as well as quality of water. I was exceptionally concerned about the quantity of water issue, because in a city of 151,000 people, if no one had running water and no ability or access to flush their toilets, you could see a scenario in which chaos ensued. That's incredibly concerning to me, and was incredibly concerning to me. That's ultimately one of the things that that led to the decision for the state to intervene to create the Incident Command Center at O.B. Curtis. And where we find ourselves today, and Jim will give you the updates, is the quantity, the risk with respect to quantity of water has been significantly reduced. It has not been eliminated, but in the short run it has been significantly reduced. Because of the tanks being full, because of the water pressure being restored, the quantity piece has put us in a position where the risk is significantly reduced. On the quality side, we believe that we are producing more clean water and better clean water out of the facility than we've seen in a long time. But we certainly also know that we have a process in place where we've got to test that over time. We're going to begin sooner rather than later, perhaps as early as today, with investigative testing. Once we have a better idea of the not so clean water having been flushed out of the system, we'll then be in a position where we can actually do the test that will lead to the removal of the boil water notice. As you know, as you've heard me say, it takes 2 consecutive samples of 120 samples from around the system, where in 100% of those samples are defined as clean. And we're hopeful if this investigative sampling goes well in the next day or so, we'll be able to move into that phase of testing. At this time, I'm going to call on Jim Craig to give us an update on what's happened over the weekend at the facility and where we find ourselves. Jim?
Thank you, Governor. We have had a pretty good weekend as far as being able to make improvements in the overall system characteristics here in the city of Jackson. But I'll remind you, while progress at the O.B. Curtis plant continues to be positive, it is very important to remember the challenges that may continue as repairs and adjustments at the plant are made. This may lead to some potential but temporary interruptions in progress. As I've mentioned in some of the previous press conferences, gaining that margin, if you will, in the system helps the reaction time in the system where those that are receiving water have minimal impacts by that as far as the pressure. All tanks are seeing those increased storage levels, which is very encouraging. Our system pressure continues to be much better and is stabilizing across the system. Early this morning, it was at 85 PSI. It's a little less than the target. We did have times during the weekend where we were up as high as 90 PSI, which is good. That is very close to our target pressure. And we will see some fluctuations at the plant, but they should not be felt throughout the system now that that margin is in place at the homeowner's tap. In addition, the team's working to perform additional critical maintenance at the facility and coordinating with the dedicated operators at the fuel treatment plant to produce additional water as needed while operations continue at O.B. Curtis. Just to reiterate what Mac and the governor both highlighted, we're so grateful to the mutual aid teams from Georgia and Florida's Rural Water Associations, as well as from Louisiana's Department of Health. Sophisticated work continues in the plant on both the membrane as well as the conventional systems, which are critical to the full functioning of the plant. The quality and variety of expertise and perspectives from our partners have been invaluable in helping Mississippi overcome obstacles and solve mechanical issues plaguing the plant. Work continues with the goal to migrate from a reactive manual repair process to a preventive maintenance process with quality assessment checks. State revolving loan funds will help pay for some of the infrastructure needed to help build a stronger foundation to make this happen. This includes a current project nearing completion on winterizing the membrane part of the O.B. Curtis plant. While hard to consider in the current Mississippi summer heat, especially out at O.B. Curtis, I don't know about the rest of the city, but it's mighty warm out there. We remember the impacts of last winter and what it had on the water system in the city of Jackson. A few months away, unpredictable Mississippi winter will be here, and plans for further winterizing components can help us mitigate those winter weather impacts on the plant. We believe these improvements are critical to ensuring safety measures are being met. Proper maintenance procedures and quality checks are imperative as we repair the plant. Just normal usage, time, and environmental conditions does deteriorate the equipment there, requiring repairs to bring it back into good condition. Keeping these assets properly repaired will provide residents with safe and quality drinking water. Successes will be measured when all residents, including outlying areas such as Byram, have full, stable access to clean, safe drinking water. And of course, the big question that everyone wants to know is, when will Jackson be off the mandatory boil water notice? Really critical processes such as the chemical balancing the system are needed before that can be removed. As the governor said, I'm very hopeful that we'll get some investigative sampling done out in the system. Over the weekend, we were able to make sure all of the air that might be in the system has been bled out. So that's a good first step, and I believe the investigative sampling will help us indicate whether it's time for us to begin the sampling for bacteria. We call them BAC-T samples out in the system to see if the water is ready to be removed from the boil water notice. It's my hope that by midweek we may be able to begin some of that 120 samples that have to be taken for 2 consecutive rounds and being clear. The first round may give us clear indication as to just how well the water is being successfully distributed from the plant throughout the system. Many automated processes have fallen off, removing monitoring of some real-time data that's needed for our chemistry analysis, including, as we discussed, the intake structure out in the reservoir. While some of the others have come back online, we have increased the amount of manual sampling at the raw water location to help the operators in being able to control the treatment processes they need to do while delivering water. We're hopeful to get these other automated processes back online to ensure more efficient processes. Moving the plant from intensive care to recovery will take time, but we now have a palpable heartbeat that is much stronger than what we had just a few days ago. Again, we'd like to thank our partners and the dedicated staff at the plant. Just can't speak enough about the dedicated staff at both the plants, at O.B. Curtis as well as at Fuel, as well as the repair and maintenance work that will have to continue to increase water quality and water quantity, which is our intermediate goal. While water quality and pressure continues to improve, the particulates removed in the process have no place to go due to restricted underground lines and under-maintained equipment. A lot of partners are working right now together to come up with sustainable solutions to this process so we can continue to provide clean water for our Jackson residents. Repairs to return the fully functional to the plant will take time and investment, and we know that that is a fact at the O.B. Curtis plant. But all of us do remain committed. It's vital that our residents have reliable and safe public water structure. Water is, of course, essential for life, and our hearts go out to those Jacksonian businesses and residents struggling every single day. The key of ensuring safe, clean water is to correct inefficient processes as we continue to do. Providing emergency maintenance needs, updating antiquated infrastructure, and critically important, hiring more trained maintenance workers and operators for this facility. Governor, thank you for your continued leadership and your support in this response, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you and your team who have been working around the clock at O.B. Curtis. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, as you know, last Monday, I promised the people of Mississippi and the people of Jackson that we would have regular daily updates on what was transpiring at the plant. Clearly, we've done many of these press conferences on most every day. I gave Saturday and Sunday the opportunity for those who are at the plant to stay at the plant. But even though we haven't had press briefings the last 2 days, the daily action reports from Mississippi Emergency Management Agency have continued to come out. To give you a little bit of perspective, in that report, it highlights the number of individuals that are at the facility working on this issue. I did not memorize last night's, but I was looking on Saturday evening. The state of Mississippi Saturday evening had approximately 16 state employees, state folks at the facility. We had representation from FEMA. We had representation from the EPA. We had representation from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. In addition to that, we had approximately 10 personnel from other states that had come through the EMAC system and through the Rural Water Association systems to be at the facility. And we had 2 City of Jackson personnel at the plant. So approximately 30 total working on various different items. I do want to, we've thanked those individuals from Louisiana, Georgia, and Florida that are here. They're providing tremendous support to this effort. I also want to thank the Kirby Mayfield and the Mississippi Rural Water Association, who have been engaged and involved throughout this process, whereas bringing folks from other states is important, obviously, whereas the utilization of FEMA's EMAC system to provide those resources is extremely important, but it also helps to have Mississippians with the Rural Water Association, because what they can do is when you need something, they can just text someone because they happen to know that that person over in the other town may have exactly what we're needing. And Kirby and his team have been incredible. As a reminder, Mississippi has over 1,100 water systems situated throughout the state of Mississippi, City of Jackson being one of those 1,100 plus, and we'll continue to work with our partners there. We talked a lot over the last week about we are focused intently on the short-run response to this disaster with the Jackson water system. But we also have said that in addition to that, we have to have an intermediate plan on how to address the challenges that we know will continue to persist after the immediate threat is behind us. And we also have to make sure that there is a long-range plan to deal with those issues. The FEMA has significant resources with respect to long-range planning that they are bringing to the table. And obviously the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers also has resources that we are going to continue to tap into. Today, I have with me Colonel Klein, who is with the Vicksburg District and leads that effort. He's fairly new to the Vicksburg District and to his position, but we're very blessed and honored to have him here in Mississippi, to have the Corps and the Vicksburg District here in Mississippi. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colonel Klein. Colonel? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Hey, thanks, Mr. Governor, and good morning, everybody. So, I tell you what, you've got a fantastic federal interagency team here that is integrated in with both the state team. It's absolutely fantastic. And we've been working with local folks in order to provide assistance to the city and the citizens of Jackson. And really, FEMA and the state are really keeping us, we're all focused on that one end state, and that's to deliver clean, reliable water to the citizens of Jackson. And so last Wednesday, we quickly mobilized right out of the Vicksburg District and sent our assessment team in. And then we started mobilizing nationally as the Corps of Engineers. So you've got folks local and national in the Corps of Engineers. Yesterday, somebody just flew in from the Washington Aqueduct to integrate into the team and provide even more expertise. And that expertise is taking care of right now those immediate solutions with the EPA, with FEMA, with state, in order to solve the immediate term problems. Tomorrow, my team from Vicksburg and working with Reachback folks in Mobile, Alabama, we're going to start taking a look at that long-term plan for the intermediate and long-term solutions. We're going to be taking a look at resiliency as well as the winterization that we just talked about in order to ensure that this system remains reliable, not only through this winter, but into the future until we can get to that long-term fix. And now for the Vicksburg District, we have to remember, Jackson is home to many of our employees and many of my employees. So we're really committed to working with the City of Jackson as well as the state on this long-term solution so that we can provide resilient water infrastructure to all of our citizens. Thanks, Mr. Governor.
Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Colonel Klein. Appreciate you and your team's efforts, and we're going to continue to work together to solve this issue. So with that, I will turn the floor over to questions. Yes, sir. Start over here.
So I think all four of you said that the goal is to bring safe, clean, reliable water to the citizens of Jackson. There are concerns that go beyond bacteria. I know that's what most of the testing covers, but there's also concerns with lead and some of those sort of minerals in the water. Is the state committed to the fact that the water will be safe when it says it's safe?
Yes, but I'm going to let Jim talk about the details.
So, yes, we want to make sure that we get safe drinking water put there. As you know, since 2015, 2016 period, we have had brought to the attention of the city a number of opportunities to make the water safer here. I do hope that a lot of the actions while the state is here will be able to move us toward making sure that there's safe drinking water here. Some of the sampling that we'll be doing from time to time in our investigative sampling will give us some indication beyond just bacteria.
Scott?
Governor, has the state found that these problems are more the result of competency and lack of maintenance than the actual age? The mayor said in an interview with ABC yesterday, climate change plays a role in this too. Is that the case in the state's opinion?
Well, clearly those are political buzzwords that the national media loves to hear and loves to talk about, and that's certainly their priority if they want to focus on those things. What I said earlier, and I will repeat, there are long-term infrastructure deficiencies in the city of Jackson that have to be addressed. But the immediate crisis for which the state has come in and taken over O.B. Curtis is a direct result of the lack of operators and the lack of staff and the lack of mechanics and the lack of people at O.B. Curtis. As I said earlier, there are significant resources that have to be invested in the system long term. But the fixes that Jim and his team have come in and done have cost in the tens of thousands of dollars. This water system should generate $50, $60, $70, $80, $100 million a year in revenues if you had proper billing and proper collections. And literally these challenges at the plant are going to end up costing tens of thousands of dollars. Now, admittedly, we're going to spend millions having activated the National Guard to deliver clean water through the 5 million bottles of water we have put out on the streets in the last 4 days. We're going to spend millions in acquiring that water, but literally the fixes that have occurred to get the O.B. Curtis plant functioning to date. And by the way, the O.B. Curtis plant today is not functioning at peak capacity. In fact, earlier today I was told that yesterday, now keep in mind our water pressure in the system is at a level that's better than it's been in a long, long time. But yesterday on the conventional side, we produced 18.7 million gallons of water. On the membrane side, we produced 8.42 million gallons of water. Approximately 27 million gallons of water produced at O.B. Curtis yesterday. That is a facility that if operating properly, could produce 50 million gallons a day, and we produced 27 yesterday. Even though we only produced 27 yesterday, we still have the tanks full now. We still have water pressures, as Jim mentioned, at levels better than in a long, long time. And so that just goes to show you that with adequate staffing and competent staffing, these fixes can be made to keep the water system pumping an adequate quantity of water in the city of Jackson. So where we are headed now is if we can continue to improve that output from 27 million gallons at O.B. Curtis yesterday to higher levels, what that allows for is it allows for fixes in other parts of the facility while continuing to provide the adequate water and ultimately clean water to the residents of the city of Jackson. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, you mentioned the veto that you made to Jackson-related funding back in the spring. Can you tell me at the time what, if any, kind of lining up of the concern over Jackson water system, what you were aware of at the time, if you knew that some of this was on the horizon?
Well, there was nothing specific at that time. It was just a general view that the infrastructure challenges and quite frankly, the operations of the city were at such a low level that we as a state were going to have to if we're going to have city functions, the state would potentially have to be engaged and involved with that. Clearly, the issues at O.B. Curtis are a challenge, but I think we also all know that the staffing challenges at O.B. Curtis are not wholly unlike the staffing challenges at the Jackson Police Department. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that the staffing challenges at O.B. Curtis are not unlike the staffing challenges when it relates to making sure that the roads are safe to drive on. Obviously, this particular, and again, as I said earlier, overall revenues at the city continue to rise, continue to increase. We've got to just recognize that, and that's where we find ourselves today. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, it sounds like you guys have a short-term plan, which is to get OB up and functional, producing quality water. But I'm curious to know, because there have been several years of water boil notices, several years OB has been unreliable. Is there any long-term discussion about potentially creating a new plant or a secondary system maybe that could support the size of the city?
Sure. Thank you for that question. Just as a reminder to everyone, we have 2 water treatment facilities in the city of Jackson. We have Fuel and we have O.B. Curtis. Some would argue that we really have 3 plants because they're really, with the membrane side and the conventional side at O.B. Curtis, they really are operating functionally independently of one another or separately from one another. But just as a reminder, the first line at O.B. Curtis was built in the 90s. When I was getting ready to attend Millsaps College in Jackson was when the O.B. Curtis facility was being built. When I was living in the city of Jackson and working in the city of Jackson in the early 2000s is when the second line at O.B. Curtis was built. The fuel plant, which has been really a godsend, is that fair? A godsend throughout this last week, pumping out 20 million gallons, and on some days pumping out as much as 23 million gallons for a facility that not that long ago was capped at 20 million. The State Department of Health expanded that. But fuel was built over 100 years ago. And so it's fine. Anyone can stand and say, look, it's because we need a new plant that we find ourselves where we are. But again, as a reminder, these challenges have literally cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix in the O.B. Curtis facility. So no, we don't believe that the obvious solution or easy solution is just go build another plant. Having said that, we do recognize the need for both an intermediate and a long-term plan. I personally believe that we cannot depend upon the city of Jackson to provide that. And therefore, we are going to work with our state and federal partners and with input from the city to develop both intermediate and long-term plans. Obviously, as we move into the intermediate and long-term planning, there has got to be a serious conversation, and the state legislature will be involved and engaged in that. That is clearly a policy decision that ultimately will have to be made. There's no doubt that state elected leaders, I've had conversations with Lieutenant Governor Hoseman, Speaker Gunn, and the members of the Jackson delegation as to exactly what that might look like long term. And I'm open to ideas. I don't personally have a guaranteed fix for that right now. I'm interested in hearing ideas from all parties, from city government, from state government, from federal government, and from those in the private sector. I'm sure that there are those that were involved and engaged in the original building of the treatment facilities that are utilized in the city of Jackson that have ideas and input as to what that might look like as well. But look, those conversations have to occur, just like conversations have to occur in both the intermediate and long term as to how do we ensure that there is a billing system in place such that if you receive water in the city of Jackson, that you are properly billed and that you then are expected to actually pay your bills. That's how these systems work. We have over 1,100 water systems in the state of Mississippi, and the way these systems work is you set up a billing system and you bill those individuals who receive it. Water is not free. It is not free to go out and build the kind of treatment facilities and operate the treatment facilities that are situated in every jurisdiction in America. Scott.
How far away are we potentially before being able to remove the boil water alert? Could it be days? Are we still looking at weeks? And we have a price tag yet. Last week, Max said $8 million spent early on. Where we stand now?
So I'll answer the second question first. We are still in that $8 million range, probably slightly more than that. That's going to fluctuate, but in the early stages, the majority of the expenditures, again, we have two missions in place right now. One mission is getting O.B. Curtis functional and operational, and one mission is because of this disaster that we had to take over last Monday night, we felt that we had to, working through the emergency declaration that we pushed through FEMA and the President signed, the other mission that we have is the distribution of both potable and non-potable water to the citizens and the residents of the city of Jackson. The bulk of those expenses that you've seen to date actually come from that second mission. The bulk of the expenses that we have expended over the last 7 days are in the activation of the Mississippi National Guard. They're in the acquisition of millions and millions and millions and millions of bottles of clean drinking water. All of that could have been avoided, by the way, had we not found ourselves in a position where dating back to July 29, 2022 is when the boil water notice first went into effect. And so that's where we are. With respect to where are we in terms of getting clean drinking water, I have found that in disasters such as this, it's a lot better for leaders to underpromise and over-deliver. And so I don't want to put a time frame on it, but I will tell you it is a major milestone that we at least are at a point where the water that we are sending through the system and the amount of water that we think we have flushed out of the system, and the fact that we believe over the weekend we're able to get the air out of the system, we were able to flush that out. It is a major milestone that we at least feel comfortable now doing and resuming the investigative testing. Last Tuesday and Wednesday we weren't doing, we didn't have to do investigative testing to know where we were and what kind of water was being produced out of the system. So it is a major milestone that we're doing investigative testing. I believe that you will be able to measure the potential for clean water and the potential for the potential for the removal of the boil water notice. I think you will be able to measure that in days, not months or weeks. But again, I can't give you an actual date because I don't want to give people false hope. And that's the thing that I've said from the beginning about this Jackson water crisis is I'm not here to tell you anything but the truth as I know it at that time. And so again, I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, I'm incredibly grateful for the people who have been at O.B. Curtis over the last 7 days. They don't take weekends. They're not taking holidays. For the most part, most of them are working well into the night. And I'm incredibly grateful for every single one of them. Because without their efforts, we'd be nowhere near where we are today. Had the state not stepped in on Monday, I don't know how long we would have been without water and without clean water in the city. But I'm incredibly grateful for those people who stepped up, and I sincerely appreciate their efforts. But I do think it will be measured in days, not in weeks or months. We'll come back to Shelby. I'll come back to y'all.
Hunter Dawkins with the Gazebo Gazette has a question.
Thank
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Shelby. Quick question, Governor, for you, and this may have already been asked a while ago or a few days ago, but Governor, how likely were you to call a special session to discuss the handling of pretty much funds for the health department in general? Because not only did this happen in the city of Jackson the past few years, but a number of other places, specifically in South Mississippi.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Hunter. I don't see a need for a special session at this time. The health department is leading the effort at the O.B. Curtis facility, and our entire focus right now for that team at O.B. Curtis is to deliver safe, clean drinking water into the system for the people of Jackson. There will certainly need to be, once a plan is before us to consider, there will be a need for the state legislature to take action. I think that there is overwhelming desire by the leadership, both in those who represent Jackson and those who do not, for the legislature to take action as to what the delivery of clean, safe drinking water to Jackson looks like in the future. I think there's a growing consensus that the city has proven its ability to deliver clean, safe drinking water to its residents over the last several years, but those conversations are ongoing, and I don't anticipate, certainly in the next week or two, any sort of special session. But again, we continue to have those conversations. We continue to have our state and federal partners working on what a long-term plan looks like, while at the same time doing some intermediate projects through the SRF loan funds that Jim mentioned earlier that will help with winterization and that will help with resiliency. And so we are focused on the short-term issue. There are projects ongoing that are going to help with the intermediate-term issue, but in terms of long-term, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made that just aren't ready to be made yet.
Governor, a couple of questions. I know that you all have talked about some different price tags and things of that nature. Can you help remind people, I know that some of this will be eligible for reimbursement, but who's paying for what funding sources there is? And then a second question, if you would be supportive of any privatization efforts of the Jackson water system. You've talked about your concerns about the management from the city.
I'm open to all options. Privatization is on the table. Having a commission that oversees failed water systems, as they have in many states, is on the table. So again, I'm open to ideas. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to discussion. I don't go into those conversations lightly. I know that there are pluses and minuses to anything we do in government, and so I want to hear from the experts and hear from other leaders in the state and in the city. You know, there have been even a number of city council members that I've seen over the last several weeks that have talked a lot about the need to hire outside contractors to come in and run either different pieces of or the system as a whole. So I think you're seeing more and more individuals recognize that the operations of city government in general, but particularly the operations of the water system, it ain't Republican or Democrat or ideological. It's about delivering a basic service to the people you represent. And so we're open to any conversations with respect to that. When it comes to the funding, there are multiple missions ongoing, as I mentioned earlier. The obvious answer to the bulk of the spending to this point is that the emergency declaration allows for the emergency itself, the delivery of clean drinking water through handing out cases of water to individuals and the expenses associated with that. And so that'll be a cost share between FEMA and the state and the city to fund that particular piece of it. That's where the bulk of the spending is to this point. With respect to other spending, it'll depend on exactly what it is. There will be some of the projects that for instance, there's already funding in place for some of the SRF projects, and some of what we are doing is expediting it. The other piece is some of the federal partner involvement, whereas the U.S. Army Corps and obviously the FEMA team is always with us when we have disasters such as this, but also EPA and others. The emergency deck does allow for the partnership of the federal agencies. By the way, I spoke with the administrator of the EPA over the weekend. Appreciate what he is doing. I encouraged the administrator to read the reports that his agency has put out over the last 3 to 4 years with respect to this particular system before he comes here. I think that'll help inform a lot for him. And so, again, it just depends on the specific expenditures. But in terms of the fix of the OB Water Curtis plant, there was, I can't give you exact numbers because I don't have them in front of me, but one of the largest expenditures for getting the plant operational and up and running was actually the leasing of the pump that we then got delivered to OB Curtis, and then the hiring of the Boone operator to come in and actually place that pump. And that was in the tens of thousands of dollars. Many of the fixes that you've seen are in the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 range. Again, not billions, thousands of dollars. Yes, sir.
So in the past, especially before the water pressure dropped, the mayor had said that a lot of the problems with turbidity were the cause of the use of lime slurry, and that they will continue to have to use lime slurry for about a year until they can switch back to soda ash. Is that a problem we could continue to see?
I'm going to let Jim answer that.
So, part of the corrosion control issues that I made part of the 2016 compliance plan after some of the lead issues were recognized and reported was about the soda ash components and are looking at what is the correct corrosive agents to use in this particular system. Luckily, yesterday, I can report that we were able to do a hot tap on a line to bring in liquid soda ash. The plant normally uses just regular soda ash in its dry form to create the slurry. Liquid lime is currently still being used to help in the alkalinity adjustments, but we're very hopeful that if we get liquid soda ash placed in the system, it could help in abating some of the lead concerns that EPA and others have and the health department has already in the administrative order and some of the other compliance plans that we've issued, as well as resolve some of that lime. So we may be able to move the mayor's timeline up. He thought it might take a year for that to occur. While we're in plant, we're very hopeful that we can shorten that timeline.
Jim, I have another question. Though we talk about water so much. Jackson also manages the sewage treatment plants. Are those operating optimally right now?
I've had so much of a limited view right now for OB Curtis. We'd really probably have to check with some others on just how well that part's working.
Short answer to your question is probably not. The way in which the regulatory environment occurs with water and wastewater is slightly different. The state agency for clean water is the State Department of Health, overseen with their federal partners, the EPA. The EPA actually has both water and wastewater, but in the state of Mississippi, it's the State Department of Environmental Quality that oversees the wastewater system. The challenges with the wastewater system, again, Chris Wells has been in the early conversations of each of these decision-making points that we've had, but suffice it to say, and there are many orders and agreements that go back, again, over the last 5 or 6 years with respect to the wastewater system that the DEQ and EPA have issued, and it's certainly, I wouldn't call it a model form of efficiency. Seeing no other questions at this time, I do want to thank those individuals who are working their tail off every single day at OB Curtis. That includes our state partners, those individuals from other states that have come in, our federal partners, as well as our partners at the City of Jackson that are literally working day and night to get the short-term issues resolved, recognizing that we are also seeing a great partnership to develop both intermediate and long-range plans, and I can't thank them enough for what they're doing. So thank you all, and God bless, and have a good rest of your Labor Day. Thank you.